And now we're going to move on to Dan Lohrmann, who's going to come in and scare the pants off us like he does. Him and Richard usually team up to do that. He's our cybersecurity expert. And I asked him for a couple of ideas that we could talk about today, Dan. And you were mentioned as the Shield. I don't have the right in front of me, but what's that program called again?
Yeah, great to be with you again, Mike, and hopefully Matt can join us back in a few moments. But yeah, Shields Up is the name of it. It's a CISA program, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. And I certainly encourage anyone who's interested in protecting your business, protecting your government agency, to go to the website, and we can talk about it a little bit, but it's really a wealth of information. But it's CISA.gov/shields up. So SHIELDS-up, Shields Up. It started as an alert that came out a few months back with the Ukraine situation being the way it is. And obviously we had ransomware attacks were record levels. We've done sessions on that in the past, with this show, 2020, 2021, now 22, it continues. But the attacks are just accelerating. And this website is kind of a one-stop shop, if you want to say. It's got some of the latest updates. Mention one of them right off the top. It lists like 5 to 7 hot off the press updates, but then it goes on to give you a lot of guidance for different size organizations, things you can do. We can talk through some of those things, but like one of the big ones that are really hot in the last several weeks is there's a cyber tool that's targeting SCADA devices and industrial control systems that has really been found last week. That's available. It's out there. That's actually basically targeting critical infrastructure. So it talks alerts like that are listed. There's a lot of details around those kinds of things, but there's also a lot of practical tips that are listed at the website.
Sort of Stuxnet too, right? Yeah,
a little bit. It's pretty scary. I mean, some of the different challenges that are listed, it's hard to know. Thankfully it has not actually been executed. There's a lot of talk in the last several months on, is Russia holding back? Is there a big one coming? We've talked about that, on past shows. There's still a lot, even like over the weekend, still a lot of individuals, including Homeland Security and CISA, 3-letter agencies in Washington, DHS and NSA, FBI. They're kind of tipping. They're not giving out any classified information, Mike, but they're kind of tipping their hand that they know something's out there, and they're just not sure if the Russians or others are going to use it against us. So it's hard for them to keep everybody on their toes and keep people alert and ready to go. But there's still a lot of fear that there could be some kind of, if there's an escalation in the situation with Ukraine, if there's a problem, we could still have, critical infrastructure being targeted in the U.S. and really some outages. And so that kind of remains to be seen, but it's certainly out there.
And President Biden has mandated now that if you do get attacked, you have to report it, right?
Correct. And that's one other thing we wanted to bring up. We can, go back and talk about some of the details in the Shields Up, but there is a law that passed about a month ago. On March 15th, the President Biden signed it, called the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act of 2022. So it's a mouthful. But it's something we've been talking about for a long time is, if there is ransomware, do you have to report it? And in many cases, the answer was no. And so even all the numbers that we have, even the data that we do have around ransomware incidents, and as big as those numbers are, many people think we're understating the problem because organizations don't have to report if there is, if they pay a ransom, if their infrastructure is attacked. And most experts believe, I certainly believe, that the numbers are actually higher than what's publicly available. And so this act basically says that you have to report cyber attacks to CISA within 72 hours. And it also says, walks through the details of that. And, a lot of the details still, it passed, it was signed, it's bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats, one of the few things they agree on in Washington around cybersecurity. The details still have to be put together by the Jen Easterly, the director of CISA, around exactly the specific operating policies and procedures and that kind of thing. They have 24 months to do it, but most people don't think it's going to be 24 months. It'll be within months. We're going to have those details of but bottom line is, if you're critical infrastructure, so if you're transportation, if you're a bank, if you're others, and we'll talk about banks in a moment, you're going to have to, basically be ready for this. There is another rule that was actually passed last fall. I think we've talked about this in the show in the past, where banks actually have to start reporting May 1st. So that was already in place. They were kind of the leading critical infrastructure area, and the financial sector, the financial ISAC, had to report data breaches and ransomware attacks May 1 already. So that's coming up just in a couple of weeks. But other sectors, will have to start reporting soon, and the law has been passed. So organizations need to be getting ready for that.
All right. So, yeah, we're not sure. No one expected this situation in Ukraine to last as long as it did. I think it shows how poor the Russian army is, for one thing. But certainly where they're very good is with cybersecurity attacks. And I know we've been talking about this quite a bit. I'm surprised that if there has been attacks, it's been very low key. And I don't think that would be the case, because the point they would try to make is do something dramatic, right, to scare people, right, like hit the electrical grid. But I think, for instance, we had the ITC folks on the show, and they're very much aware of the situation, and I think they're fairly well protected. That's just one example. I assume a lot of the other water systems, and like you say, the banking and all the rest, they've got to be pretty much aware of this and working real hard to keep the bad guys out, right?
They do. And I think, I know we've talked about this in the past with Richard. I think the challenge is, for many of these systems and control systems, they just were not really ever thought of as something that needs to be protected. They're behind the eight ball. And so we know there are vulnerabilities. I'm not going to start going into the specifics that I'm aware of, but we know that, there are critical infrastructures in this country that are vulnerable. And as we've just seen in the last few weeks with some of the announcements that were made, and typically when stuff is public and they go, wide with it, Mike, that's really kind of a last resort in many cases. I mean, the three-letter agencies, like, if they know your company, your situation, your government is being attacked, they will come to you and they will talk to you. When they make broad brush statements for like everyone in electric grid, everyone in these critical infrastructure areas, be aware, take these steps now, that's generally a last resort for them, because they don't necessarily, they don't necessarily want to, raise the alarm too widely, if you know what I'm saying. So I would just encourage people to go to this website, the Shields Up website, walk through the recommendations. They have recommendations in here for corporate leaders, for CEOs, talk about things like, tabletop exercises and things you can do, but how do you respond to ransomware? Different steps you can take for families and literally protecting your home networks. And we've talked about many of those things in the past. They also list the advisories and some tools that are available that if you were to get hit, what you can do and how you can work together with the criminal justice community, how you can work together with, your state police in Michigan, the FBI, Secret Service, and those kinds of organizations. So I do think the warning's been out there a lot. It's actually, from my, kind of behind the curtain, in my view, it's a little bit concerning that I think a lot of people think there's been, a lot of articles on LinkedIn, a lot of people that I've talked to said, oh, it's all crying wolf. And almost like people are letting their guards down a little bit because nothing's happened. But a lot of the experts, Mike, and you probably know better than me, they now think this war could go on for months, if not, some people are saying years. I hope and pray that doesn't happen. I hope this gets resolved sooner than that. But we can't let our guards down because we just don't know when this is going to get ratcheted up. We do know this, that there's additional capability that the Russians have, that they're the people who support them, other nation states, other organizations, I'll just leave it at that, have additional capability that they have not used. And so I don't think this is the time to be letting your guard down. Now, you can't come, I can't keep coming on here every month, every 2 months and keep saying the same thing. At some point, people are going to say, Dan, you're crying wolf. I don't believe it. But I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I really don't.
Yeah, and part of that might be the U.S. probably has more capability than any nation state out there. And if the Russians did something, the U.S. could just shut down all their oil and gas production in a heartbeat. And I think Vladimir Putin is aware of that as well. So if he starts that slippery path, then it would be cyber war, essentially. It wouldn't be nuclear attacks or physical war, but all heck would break loose, right?
That's true. I mean, I think just like in the nuclear sense, mutually assured destruction has been a term we've known for decades, and I think there's a lot of fear. That once you release it, once you utilize your tools, they're used. It's kind of like do you want to escalate? Do you want to use that weapon, if you will, cyber weapon? Do you want to use that attack against the U.S.? Because obviously we can retaliate. Our allies can retaliate. And then there's also a lot of fear that, there's people believe that it could actually lead to NATO activating other types of attacks, so, physical with weapons that a cyber attack, if it did hit critical infrastructure, would have the impact of causing maybe the U.S. Army to get involved, NATO to get involved in Ukraine, which obviously they don't want to have happen now. So, yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons. I mean, certainly our capabilities in the U.S. are outstanding, and we could hit back. But I think at the government level, at the local government level, at the state level, at the individual corporate level for your companies, we still need to prepare. And there continue to be denial of service attacks, continue to be ransomware attacks that are hitting organizations now. So those same steps that you'd be taking from the Shields Up, the CISA.gov/Shields Up website would protect you also for other types of attacks besides those that might come from Russia or somewhere else.
Got about 2 minutes left. Why don't you take a minute of that and explain what Presidio is, your new employer?
Yeah, thanks. Joined Presidio back in November of last year, and we are a global company, mainly focused in the U.S., but we digital solution providers, so help people in the journey to the cloud, if you will. We help on a wide variety, really a full stack of technology services, managed services, and certainly a lot in cybersecurity. So we're really, as you remember, you guys know, I worked for Security Mentor for many years and mainly just focused on security awareness and planning. Presidio can really help you in all aspects of cybersecurity and really protecting the people, process, and technology around that, not just the technology. So happy to help. If people want to reach out, they can reach me. I'm available at GovCSO is my Twitter handle. Certainly connect with me at LinkedIn, Dan Lohrmann, and then in Presidio, I'm D Lohrmann, DLOHRMANN at Presidio.com. So certainly can reach me that way as well.